The vast and peaceful galaxy was home to many different species, all of them living under the rule of the Galactic Council. For centuries, the Council had maintained a delicate balance of power, keeping peace and order between the races. But recently, something had changed. A dark cloud was spreading across the galaxy. The Exo-Rith Empire, a ruthless and powerful alien race, had begun their conquest, consuming one system after another. They were unstoppable, and no one seemed to know how to stop them. In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened for an emergency meeting. The Grand Chamber, a vast space filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy, was tense with uncertainty. The Council was designed to bring unity, but now it seemed like the very thing that was holding everyone back. The various species argued with each other, their voices rising in a chaotic mix of fear and frustration. The Exo-Rith threat was growing, and still, no solution was in sight. The members of the Council were divided. Some, like the Xintar, a technologically advanced species known for their intelligence, believed in diplomacy and negotiation. They argued that the Exo-Rith could be reasoned with, that there was always a chance for peace if the right terms were presented. Others, like the fierce and proud Velkarons, wanted to strike immediately, launching a full-scale attack to end the threat before it spread any further. But not everyone was so sure. Many of the smaller races, who had suffered from the Exo-Rith's raids in the past, felt helpless. They were afraid to take action without the backing of the larger, more powerful species, unsure whether a fight would be worth the cost. Hours turned into days, and the arguments only grew louder. The Council was failing to act, and the galaxy was beginning to notice. News of the Exo-Rith's conquests spread quickly, with entire star systems falling under their brutal control. The Exo-Rith were ruthless and efficient, leaving no survivors. The Council's inaction was costing countless lives, and there was no end in sight. The galaxy's citizens were starting to lose faith in their leaders. Among all the voices in the room, one figure remained silent. Captain Maria Gray, commander of the human warship Tempest, sat in the back of the room, watching the scene unfold. Humanity had been a part of the Galactic Council for only a short time. The humans were different from the other species. They were bold, unafraid of conflict, and quick to act when necessary. But their methods were often seen as too extreme by the more cautious members of the Council. Maria had seen the destruction caused by the Exo-Rith firsthand. Her family's homeworld had been one of the first to fall to their attacks. She knew that the galaxy couldn't sit idly by and wait for the next attack to strike. They needed to act, and they needed to act now. But the Council was still debating. The discussions were endless, with no conclusion in sight. Maria could feel the frustration building inside her. She had tried to offer her own solutions, but her ideas were dismissed. The Council was too focused on their petty politics to understand the gravity of the situation. The tension in the room reached a boiling point when a message arrived from the Exo-Rith. The message was brief, cold, and filled with threats. The Exo-Rith declared that they would continue their conquest until every system in the galaxy was under their control. The Council's failure to act was seen as weakness, and the Exo-Rith made it clear that they would not stop until they had crushed all opposition. The message sent a wave of fear through the room. It was clear now that the Exo-Rith were not interested in negotiation, they were here to dominate, and they would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. Maria stood up, her voice calm but filled with authority. "We cannot wait any longer. We've seen what the Exo-Rith are capable of. They don't care about peace or diplomacy. They will destroy everything in their path unless we stop them. It's time for action." The room fell silent. The Council members turned to Maria, unsure of how to respond. Her words were harsh but true. The Exo-Rith had already proven that they would not stop until the galaxy was theirs. The longer the Council delayed, the more lives would be lost. But still, the voices of doubt lingered. There were those who feared the consequences of war. They feared that they weren't ready, that the galaxy couldn't afford another conflict. Captain Gray's gaze swept across the room, locking eyes with the Council members. She could see the fear in their eyes. It was the same fear that had paralyzed the galaxy for far too long. They were afraid of change, afraid of the cost of war. But Maria knew that sometimes there was no other choice. Sometimes you had to fight for survival, no matter the cost. The Zintar representative, a tall and slender figure known for his diplomatic skills, spoke up. Captain, we understand your concerns, but war is not the answer. If we attack the Exorith, we risk everything. The balance of power in the galaxy will shift forever. We need to be careful. Maria's eyes narrowed. What are we waiting for? The Exorith are already shifting the balance of power in their favor. They don't care about balance, they only care about conquest. The debate raged on, with no resolution in sight. The council seemed to be stuck in a never-ending loop of indecision. And then, just as the room seemed ready to explode, a new message arrived, one that would change everything. The message was broadcast across the galaxy, cutting through the chaos of the council meeting like a lightning strike. It was brief, but it sent a shockwave through every species in the galaxy. The message was clear. We are the galactic storm. We have come to end this madness. The source of the message was unknown, but the impact was immediate. The voice that spoke these words was human, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard before. It was a challenge, a warning, and a declaration of war. The humans were coming, and they were ready to fight. The council fell silent. The representatives looked at one another in stunned silence, realizing that they were no longer in control of the situation. The humans had made their move. The Exorith had made their move. And now, the galaxy would have to decide whether it would continue to wait in fear or take a stand. The storm was coming, and there was no turning back. The galaxy had been on the edge of disaster for far too long, trapped in endless debates and hesitation. The Galactic Council had failed to act, and the Exorith Empire's conquest of the galaxy was relentless. Entire systems had fallen under their brutal control, and still, the leaders of the galaxy hesitated. But then, a single message had changed everything. We are the galactic storm. We have come to end this madness. The voice was human, clear, and unyielding. No one knew who sent the message, but it was clear the humans had made their intentions known. They were not waiting for the council to act. They were taking matters into their own hands. As the galaxy was consumed by fear and uncertainty, the Tempest, a massive human warship, cut through space like a blade. Its hull gleamed with a dark metallic sheen, and its weapon systems were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Captain Maria Gray stood on the command deck, her eyes fixed on the vast expanse of stars before her. She was calm, but inside, a fire burned. Humanity had waited too long. They had watched as the galaxy turned a blind eye to the suffering of so many. Now, it was time to act. The Tempest was not just a warship, it was a symbol. It was humanity's first step into a war that would change the course of history. Maria had no illusions about what lay ahead. The Exorith were fierce, their empire built on destruction and fear. But the humans had something the Exorith did not resolve. While the other races of the galaxy debated and faltered, humanity had been preparing for this moment. The Tempest was a marvel of human engineering, and its crew was ready to fight with everything they had. The plan was simple, but it required precision. The Exorith had fortified one of their major strongholds on the outskirts of the galaxy, a base known as Zakar. It was the heart of their military operations, and it had to be destroyed. If the humans could take down Zakar, it would be a blow to the very foundation of the Exorith Empire. But the base was heavily guarded, surrounded by dozens of Exorith warships and defensive systems. No one in the galaxy thought it could be done, but Captain Gray believed in the impossible. "Prepare the fleet," Maria ordered. Her voice was steady, but the weight of the task ahead pressed heavily on her shoulders. The Tempest was not alone. Alongside it were several human allies' ships that had joined the cause after the message had spread across the galaxy. They were not as powerful as the Tempest, but together, they formed a force that was more than the sum of its parts. The countdown began, and the tension aboard the Tempest was palpable. Every crew member was focused, their eyes locked on their stations. The hum of the engines reverberated through the ship as they approached Zakar. The Exorith, however, were not unaware of the human presence. Their scouts had already reported the arrival of the Tempest and its fleet. They knew the attack was coming, but they didn't know when. Maria stood in front of the massive viewport, staring out into the black void of space. She wasn't afraid. She had seen the devastation the Exilrith had caused, and she knew this was the only way to stop them. The time for words had passed. Now, it was time to show the galaxy the strength of humanity. As the fleet moved closer to Zakar, the Exilrith launched their counterattack. Hundreds of warships surged forward, their engines roaring as they formed a blockade around the base. The battle was about to begin. All units, engage. Maria's voice rang out, firm and unwavering. The first wave of Exilrith ships exploded in a brilliant flash of light as the Tempest fired its main guns. The blasts were powerful enough to shatter the shields of the Exilrith ships, but the enemy fleet was relentless. The Tempest dodged incoming fire, its maneuverability and speed allowing it to weave through the onslaught. Its weapons systems fired with precision, picking off enemy ships one by one. Humanity's strike had begun. But the Exilrith were not easy opponents. They fought back with everything they had, their ships swarming around the Tempest like hornets. The Tempest's shields flickered under the pressure, but the ship held strong. Maria's orders were swift and calculated, each one delivered with the precision of a master tactician. The battle was intense, a clash of firepower and strategy, with every move having life or death consequences. As the battle raged on, Maria's mind raced. She could see the enemy lines starting to break, but there was still much to be done. The Exilrith were not giving up easily, and Zakar remained heavily fortified. The ground assault was the next step. The Tempest's fleet launched several smaller dropships, their mission to take control of Zakar's surface and disable its defenses. The crew knew that once the surface defenses were down, the rest of the fleet would be able to penetrate the base's core. The dropships descended towards Zakar's atmosphere, entering the hostile planet's gravity well. The Exilrith responded quickly, sending waves of ground forces to meet the human troops. The battle on the surface of Zakar was nothing short of brutal. The humans fought with the same fierce determination that had fueled their rise to power. Each human soldier knew the importance of their mission. They were not just fighting for their survival, but for the survival of the entire galaxy. The ground battle was a blur of gunfire and explosions. The humans pushed forward, cutting down Exilrith soldiers with relentless. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Tempest continued to fight. The Exilrith fleet was losing ground, but they weren't done yet. Their final push was coming, a desperate attempt to turn the tide of battle. A massive Exilrith battleship, the largest in their fleet, emerged from the shadows of Zakar. Its weapon systems were powerful enough to take down entire fleets in a single strike. The Tempest locked onto the battleship with its targeting systems, but it was moving too fast. Maria gritted her teeth. This was it. There was no turning back. With a sharp command, the Tempest's engines roared as it closed the distance. In a bold move, Maria ordered the ship to go directly into the heart of the enemy formation, a gamble that could either win the battle or destroy the Tempest itself. The gamble paid off. The Tempest's main cannons fired with deadly accuracy, hitting the Exilrith battleship in its weak spot, destroying its core. The explosion rocked the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the Exilrith fleet. The tide had turned. As the last of the Exilrith ships were defeated, a triumphant cheer rose from the human fleet. Zakar had fallen, and the galaxy would remember humanity's first strike. The humans had proven that they were not just another species in the galaxy, they were a force to be reckoned with. The storm had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had long been divided, with countless species locked in conflict, distrust, and territorial disputes. The Galactic Council, once seen as a beacon of hope for intergalactic unity, had become nothing more than a puppet to the most powerful factions. As the Exilrith Empire tightened its grip on more and more systems, it became clear that no one could stand against them alone. The galaxy's various races, each with their own strengths and flaws, had always kept to themselves, too wary of each other to form real alliances. But everything changed after the arrival of humanity. Humanity, with its boldness and unmatched resolve, had already made its presence known. The Tempest and its crew had delivered a powerful message to the galaxy. If the Council would not act, humanity would. Now, with the Exo-Rith Empire's forces rapidly expanding and threatening to crush everything in their path, something extraordinary was beginning to happen. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, was on the brink of uniting. The species that had once fought each other began to see the necessity of cooperation. If they did not come together, they would all fall. It began with a simple request from the humans, a call to the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful factions to meet on a neutral station. The Tempest was to serve as the flagship of the human delegation, and Captain Maria Gray was tasked with leading the charge for unity. For weeks, the station buzzed with activity as diplomats, military leaders, and representatives from all corners of the galaxy prepared for the historic summit. The air was thick with tension, as old wounds between species had yet to heal. But despite the looming uncertainty, there was a shared understanding. The Exo-Rith Empire's cruelty could not be allowed to continue unchecked. As Maria stood on the command deck of the Tempest, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. This was not just a meeting of political minds, it was a turning point for the entire galaxy. The fate of billions hung in the balance. The human fleet, once a lone symbol of defiance, had now become the rallying point for the galaxy's resistance. But Maria knew that unity would not come easily. The species of the galaxy had been divided for too long. Their differences were vast, and trust was in short supply. The first to arrive at the summit was the Zorathians, a proud warrior race whose ships were renowned for their speed and firepower. Their representative, Grand Marshal Valkyr, was a formidable leader who had never trusted the humans. His people had fought against the Exo-Rith for decades, and yet they had never been able to break their hold on the galaxy. The Zorathians had long been independent, and Valkyr's loyalty was to his people first. The Zorathians had always relied on their military might, and he made it clear that they would never bow to anyone. Next came the Drakari, a species of towering reptilian beings known for their ancient wisdom and vast knowledge of galactic history. Their representative, Chancellor Ashok, was a quiet figure, but his presence commanded respect. The Drakari were known for their neutrality, avoiding involvement in the conflicts of others. But now, the Exo-Rith threat had reached their borders, and the Chancellor knew that neutrality would no longer save them. The last to arrive were the Lorian, a race of telepathic beings whose ability to communicate without words was both a blessing and a curse. The Lorian had long remained hidden in the shadows of galactic politics, offering their wisdom only when absolutely necessary. However, with the Exo-Rith Empire encroaching on their territory, they had been forced to confront the reality that their isolation was no longer possible. High Counselor Lyria, the Lorian representative, entered the meeting with a calm but resolute expression. Her people had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and they understood that this was a moment that could not be ignored. The representatives of the various species gathered around the table. Maria Gray stood in the center of the room, her presence a stark reminder of humanity's new role in the galaxy. She wasn't just a captain, she was a symbol of change, a beacon of hope that the galaxy had never known before. As she looked around the room, she could sense the tension. The species here were united in their opposition to the Exo-Rith Empire, but that was where the unity ended. Their differences ran deep, and old prejudices and distrust simmered just beneath the surface. Maria took a deep breath, her voice steady but strong as she addressed the group. "We all know why we're here," she began. "The Exo-Rith Empire is a threat to everything we hold dear. If we don't act now, we will all be swept away. But if we can unite, if we can put aside our differences, we can defeat them. Together, we are stronger than any one of us could ever be alone." There was a long silence as the representatives absorbed her words. Valkyr was the first to speak. "Humans speak of unity," he said, his voice filled with skepticism. "But why should we trust you? Your people have only just arrived in the galaxy. You have no history here. You are new. You have no claim to this fight." Maria met his gaze without flinching. "We may be new, but we've already shown what we can do. We've already struck a blow against the Exo-Rith. We've fought alongside your people in the past, and we can fight alongside you now. But only if you trust us. Only if you trust each other." Chancellor Shook spoke next, his voice slow and deliberate. Trust is not something that is given freely. It must be earned. We are all afraid. The Exorith have made us all their enemies, and we have suffered. But we have also learned that to survive, we must be willing to act, not as separate species, but as one force. The galaxy is not a collection of individual systems. It is a unity, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not. High Counselor Lyria was the last to speak. Her voice echoed in the minds of all present. We have watched civilizations crumble before. We have seen what happens when fear and pride separate us. We have also seen what happens when we stand together. The choice is clear. We must unite. The words hung in the air as the representatives looked at one another. For the first time, they saw something in each other's eyes: understanding. The distrust was still there, but it was no longer insurmountable. The reality of the Exorith threat was greater than their differences. And for the first time, the species of the galaxy understood that they were not alone in their fight. After hours of heated debate, the summit finally concluded with an agreement that would change the galaxy forever. The galaxy would unite under a single banner. The Tempest would serve as the flagship of a united fleet, and together the galaxy's forces would strike at the heart of the Exorith Empire. As Maria left the summit, she knew that the road ahead would be difficult. Trust could not be built in a single day, and the galaxy was still divided in many ways. But for the first time, the pieces were in place. The galaxy was no longer fragmented. It was united, and together they would face the Exorith threat head-on. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The battle had been long in the making, each species bringing its own strengths, fears, and hopes to the table. The alliances forged in the previous days were still fragile, but there was no turning back now. The Exorith Empire, with its overwhelming might, had threatened everything the galaxy held dear. And now, the galaxy had decided to stand united, with humanity leading the charge. The storm, as it was being called, was finally upon them. Captain Maria Gray stood on the bridge of the Tempest, staring out into the dark expanse of space. The Alliance fleet had assembled, a massive force made up of every species that had agreed to stand against the Exorith. Zorathian battlecruisers, Drakari command ships, and Lorian warfleets filled the space around the Tempest, their weapons ready and their shields charged. The quiet tension on the bridge was palpable. Every ship, every soldier, every leader was ready for the battle ahead, but nobody. Maria's thoughts were interrupted by the voice of her first officer, Commander Elias Kane. Captain, the fleet is ready. The Exorith are within range, and our scouts report a large battle group forming at the edge of the system. It's now or never. Maria turned to face him, her expression unwavering. Activate the communications relay. I want to address the fleet. The bridge crew quickly got to work, setting up the broadcast. The holographic image of Maria appeared in the center of the command room, visible to every ship in the Alliance. The various species had their own unique ways of communicating, but through the Lorian telepaths and the universal translator, Maria's voice reached all of them. It was calm but firm, a voice that carried the weight of everything they had fought for. Soldiers of the galaxy, today we stand together. For too long, we have been divided by fear, distrust, and old grudges. But today, we fight as one. Today, we unleash the storm that will break the Exorith Empire. They will know the power of our unity. Together, we are stronger than anything they can throw at us. We fight not just for our survival, but for the future of the galaxy. Remember this, we are not alone. We are united. Now, let's show them what that means. The response was immediate. Every ship in the fleet raised its shields and prepared for the inevitable clash. Maria felt the energy in the room shift as the fleet rumbled to life, engines powering up, weapons primed. The time for words had passed. It was time for action. As the fleet moved into position, the silence of space was shattered by the blinding flash of weapons fire. The first shots were fired by the Zorathian cruisers, their plasma cannons cutting through the darkness like bolts of lightning. The Exol-Rith fleet responded instantly, launching a barrage of their own. The battle had begun. Maria watched as the holographic map of the battlefield filled with indicators of energy signatures, ship positions, and incoming fire. The Exol-Rith had more ships, but the United Fleet had something far more powerful: coordination. The different species may have had different tactics and strategies, but under the leadership of the Tempest's command, they moved as one. Zarathian ships darted in and out of battle, firing fast and retreating to avoid enemy fire. The Dracari, with their immense firepower, laid down heavy barrages that tore through the Exol-Rith's defenses. The Lorian fleets, with their advanced shields and warp technology, created a shifting front that confused the Exol-Rith and broke their lines. Maria's heart raced as the battle unfolded. Her orders had been simple: maintain the flow of the battle, coordinate with the fleet, and give the Exol-Rith no chance to regroup. But she knew that simple wasn't always easy. Every move had to be calculated. Every attack had to count. One mistake, one missed shot could change everything. The Exol-Rith didn't give up easily. Their flagship, a massive dreadnought, loomed at the heart of their fleet. It was heavily shielded and bristling with weapons. It was the most dangerous ship on the battlefield, and it was heading directly for the Tempest. "Captain, the dreadnought is closing in," Elias said, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to make a move now, or we'll lose the initiative." Maria nodded. The battle was reaching its turning point, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. "Prepare the Tempest for a full assault. Target the dreadnought's command deck. We hit them there. We take out their leadership." The crew scrambled into action, firing up the weapon systems, locking on the dreadnought, and aligning the ship's cannons. The Tempest's shields glowed bright as it moved to intercept the enemy. The massive dreadnought loomed closer, its weapons primed for a devastating strike. "Firing now," Elias said, a look of determination on his face. The Tempest fired, its cannons unleashing a storm of energy that tore through the cold expanse of space. The blast struck the dreadnought's command deck directly, sending a massive shockwave rippling through the Exol-Rith fleet. The dreadnought's shields faltered, and then the ship exploded in a violent eruption of fire and debris. The impact was felt across the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the Exol-Rith forces. The remaining ships faltered, their coordinated attack splintering. The unthinkable had happened: their flagship was destroyed, and with it, their command structure had collapsed. The tide of the battle had turned in an instant. But the Exol-Rith were not defeated yet. They still had numbers, still had firepower, and they would not retreat easily. As the remaining ships fought desperately, Maria knew the war wasn't over. But the storm had been unleashed. The Exol-Rith had seen the power of the galaxy's unity, and they would never forget it. The battle raged on, but the Alliance fleet pushed forward with renewed strength. The combined forces of the Zarathians, Dracari, Lorian, and humanity were unstoppable now. Together, they were a force that no empire, no matter how powerful, could defeat. Maria stood tall on the bridge of the Tempest, watching the chaos unfold, her heart pounding with the realization of what had just been achieved. The Exol-Rith were still dangerous, but they had been shown that the galaxy was not theirs to take. They had underestimated the strength of unity. And now, the storm had been unleashed. There was no going back. The galaxy was changing, and it was humanity's first strike that had made it all possible. The galaxy was on the brink of collapse. Once a shining beacon of hope and unity, it now stood divided, fractured by years of war and distrust. The old alliances had crumbled, and the great empires, who once ruled with fear, were now desperate to maintain their power. But in the darkest of times, a single spark had the potential to ignite a new era. That spark was humanity. Captain Elias Mercer stood at the helm of the Phoenix, staring at the swirling void of space. The bridge of the ship was tense, filled with the hum of machines and the murmur of crew members preparing for what was to come. The galaxy was a powder keg, and humanity was now at the center of it all. Only a few short months ago, Earth had been a minor player in the galactic theater, its people cautious and unaware of the vast powers that surrounded them. But that had all changed when they had fought back. When humanity had taken a stand against the oppressors of the galaxy, they had done the unthinkable. They had won. The Exorith Empire, a ruthless race that had once seen themselves as the rulers of the galaxy, had underestimated humanity. They had thought Earth a weak and insignificant planet, ripe for conquest. But they had been wrong. The human spirit, it seemed, was a force unlike any other. They fought with a passion and determination that no other species could match. When the first battle was won, it sent a shockwave across the galaxy. The once unified factions that had cowered under the Exorith's might were now rallying around the banner of humanity. "Captain, we've received word from the Coalition," Commander Sarah Larkin, the Phoenix first officer, said as she entered the bridge, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of urgency. "The forces are in position. It's time." Elias nodded, his gaze never leaving the vast expanse of space. "All systems ready?" "Ready, sir," Sarah replied. "We've aligned our fleet with the Drakari, Zarathians, and Lorian forces. The Exoreth won't know what hit them." Elias finally turned, his face resolute. "This is it. Once we strike, there's no turning back. We're fighting for more than just victory. We're fighting for a future. For peace." The crew aboard the Phoenix was a mix of humans and allies, each representing a different species. Together, they had forged an unbreakable bond. In the face of the Exorith's relentless advance, they had fought side by side, proving that unity was stronger than any division. The ships of the United Fleet moved in perfect harmony, a single force, bound by a common goal. And that goal was clear: destroy the Exorith Empire once and for all. Elias walked to the command chair, his hand resting on the armrest as the ship's systems hummed to life. The fleet was in motion, the ships of all species powering up, their engines roaring with power. The Exorith had no idea what was coming. Their forces were spread thin, their confidence in their superiority blinding them to the true threat. The Phoenix and its fleet were coming for them. As the fleet approached the Exorith stronghold, the mission was simple: strike the heart of the Empire, the Exorith capital world of Xiron. The planet was a fortress, heavily defended, but it was also the key to the Empire's power. If they could destroy Xiron, they could bring down the entire Empire. But the risks were immense. The Exorith had powerful defenses, and their flagship, the Imperius, was a behemoth of war that could decimate fleets with ease. It would take everything they had to even get close. Approaching Xiron's atmosphere, "Captain," Sarah called out. The tension was thick in the air as the ship's hull vibrated with the strain of entering the hostile planet's orbit. "Hold steady," Elias ordered, his voice calm despite the danger that lay ahead. "We need to break their defenses before we can even think about hitting the surface." The Phoenix crew worked in unison as the ship entered orbit. The view on the main screen shifted from the cold emptiness of space to the sight of Xiron below a planet shrouded in storm clouds and crisscrossed by the scars of past battles. The dark surface was dotted with flashes of energy as the Exorith forces scrambled to prepare for the incoming attack. "We've got incoming fire," Sarah reported, her voice tight. Shields holding at 85%. Elias's heart pounded in his chest. They had only one shot at this. He glanced at the tactical readouts, his mind calculating every angle, every possibility. "Focus fire on their defenses. All ships converge on the planetary shields. If we don't break through, we're finished." The fleet opened fire. Beams of concentrated energy shot through space, striking the Exorith defense grid around Xiron. The plant shields flared brightly, absorbing the impact but weakening with every hit. The Exorith responded with a barrage of their own, their dreadnoughts launching missiles and plasma blasts, shaking the ships of the Alliance to their core. The battle was fierce, but the United Fleet held strong. The ships of the Drakari unleashed their devastating energy cannons, ripping through the Exorith defenses, while the Lorian ships used their warp capabilities to outmaneuver the enemy, taking down critical targets with precision. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Exorith defenses faltered. The planetary shield collapsed, leaving Xiron vulnerable. The fleet's combined firepower had done the impossible. They had breached the heart of the Exorith Empire. "We've broken through," Sarah said, a note of relief in her voice. Elias stood, his gaze now locked on the planet below. "Now, We end it. The Phoenix and its fleet descended toward Siren's surface, dodging incoming fire from the Exo-Rith's remaining defenses. As they approached the planet's surface, the ground shook with the force of the battle. The final strike was coming, and with it, the promise of a new dawn for the galaxy. The Alliance ships landed on the surface of Exiron, their troops preparing to engage in the final push to destroy the heart of the Exo-Rith Empire. It would be a fight to the death, but the galaxy was ready. Humanity's first strike had led them to this moment. And now, standing together with their allies, they would finally bring the war to an end. Elias Mercer stood at the head of his team, the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. But he wasn't afraid. He had seen what humanity was capable of. And now, he knew, they would show the galaxy what it meant to rise from the ashes of war. It was a new dawn, one where the Exo-Rith would no longer rule, and where peace could finally be within reach. As the first rays of a new day broke over the horizon of Xiron, the battle continued, but so did the hope for a future where the galaxy could heal and rebuild. The war was not over, but the galaxy would never be the same again. And humanity, once a small and insignificant species, had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with, a force capable of changing the fate of the entire galaxy.